When they tried to poison me, I ruined their empire. I never thought my own son would try to kill me. After 33 years of catching financial predators, I became prey to the one person I trusted most. The moment I tasted that bitter metallic flavor beneath the sweetness of the champagne, I knew my entire world had changed forever. My name is Patricia Monroe. For over 3 decades, I worked at Hammond and Blackwell, one of Chicago's most prestigious hedge funds on LaSalle Street. My specialty was forensic accounting, tracking down market manipulation rings and financial fraud schemes that most people would never notice. I developed an eye for patterns, discrepancies in numbers that told stories of deception. This skill served me well in my career. I never imagined it would save my life in retirement. The irony is not lost on me now, as I look back on everything that happened. The same meticulous attention to detail that earned me promotions and bonuses would eventually reveal my own son's betrayal. Retirement had been my dream for so long. I planned to restore my grandfather's 1957 Thunderbird to its original glory. The robin egg blue paint job was faded but still beautiful, like a piece of the sky captured in metal and chrome. My grandfather had left it to me when I was just a teenager, knowing my fascination with the elegant curves and powerful engine. For years it sat in storage while I built my career and raised my family. I promised myself that once I retired, I would give that car the attention it deserved. The Thunderbird represented everything I had worked for: freedom, beauty, a connection to my past, and a promise for my future. I also looked forward to those quiet morning walks along Lake Michigan. There is something magical about watching the sunrise over the water, the way the light plays across the gentle waves, the peaceful. Solitude was a stark contrast to the high-pressure environment of financial investigation that had dominated my life for so long. During those early morning walks, I would often reflect on my career, the countless hours spent poring over spreadsheets and financial statements, looking for the tiniest inconsistencies that would lead me to the truth. I found peace in the rhythm of the waves, the call of the gulls, and the gradual brightening of the sky. Nature follows patterns too, but honest ones. My son Brian seemed to have inherited my appreciation for vintage automobiles. He opened his classic car restoration shop 5 years before my retirement. I was so proud when he first showed me the space he had leased. The brick building with its high ceilings and concrete floors was perfect for his vision. Brian had always been good with his hands, taking apart engines and putting them back together since he was a teenager. I thought his business was the perfect outlet for his talents. I remember the day he signed the lease. We celebrated with champagne, ironically enough, and he told me that he hoped to build something I would be proud of. Something that would last. Something that would honor the passion for automobiles that I had passed down to him. His wife, Elena, had a different kind of vision. She opened a flower studio that catered to high-end clients and built her brand through carefully curated social media posts. Her Instagram page looked like something from a magazine, all perfectly arranged bouquets and artistic flat lays. She had a gift for color and composition. I admired her creativity and business sense. At least I thought I did. Elena came from a family without much money. She had worked her way through college and was determined to build something beautiful and profitable. I respected her drive, her ambition. In many ways, she reminded me of myself when I was younger. Perhaps that was why I trusted her so completely. The first 2 years of my retirement were everything I had imagined. I spent my mornings by the lake with a travel mug of coffee, watching the light change as the sun rose higher in the sky. My afternoons were dedicated to the Thunderbird, carefully restoring each component to its original condition. I joined a classic car club and made new friends who shared my passion. Life was good, peaceful in a way I had never experienced before. I kept in regular contact with Brian and Elena, having Sunday dinners with them and my granddaughter Sophia. Those family gatherings were precious to me. We would talk about our weeks, share stories, and plan for the future. Sophia would show me her latest ballet moves, twirling gracefully in the living room while we applauded. Those moments felt perfect, untouchable. Then the calls started coming. Brian needed a small loan to cover some unexpected expenses at the shop. Elena was expanding her business and needed capital for new refrigeration units for her flowers. I was happy to help. Family supports family. That was how I was raised. My own parents had struggled financially, but they always emphasized the importance of helping each other. I had the means to assist Brian and Elena, and I did so gladly. At first, the request seemed reasonable. A few thousand for inventory, another few thousand for marketing. Business expenses that made sense for growing enterprises. $6,500. That was the amount I started sending them each month. It seemed reasonable at the hot time. My pension from the hedge fund was generous, and I had substantial savings. I could afford to help my son and his wife build their dreams. I also paid for my granddaughter Sophia's ballet lessons. She was exceptionally talented, earning a spot in an elite program that cost almost as much as a college education. I wanted to give her every opportunity to pursue her passion. Sophia had inherited Elena's grace and artistic sensibility, along with Brian's determination. When she danced, her whole face lit up with joy. I would have paid any amount to nurture that talent, to keep that light shining in her eyes. I remember the day I first noticed something was wrong. I was reviewing my accounts, a habit from my working days that I never quite abandoned. A charge for carburetor kits caught my eye. It was the second one that month, for the exact same amount. Brian had mentioned restoring a 1965 Mustang for a client, but 2 identical carburetor orders seemed excessive. I stared at the numbers on my screen, feeling that familiar tingle at the base of my skull. The one that had alerted me to countless financial discrepancies throughout my career. Something was off. The pattern was broken. When I called the supplier directly to inquire, they had no record of the second shipment. I told myself it was probably just a clerical error. The same week, I noticed duplicate charges from Elena's Colombian rose supplier. Again, 2 identical invoices for the same shipment. The coincidence was too perfect, too suspicious. 2 businesses, 2 sets of duplicate invoices in the same week. My forensic accounting instincts were screaming now, but I silenced them. This was my family, not some Wall Street fraud case. My auditor instincts kicked in. I began keeping closer track of my financial support for their businesses. More discrepancies emerged. Equipment that was supposedly purchased but never appeared in the shop. Flower shipments that arrived half full, but were billed at full price. The numbers were not adding up. And after 3 decades of making numbers, tell the truth, I knew what that meant. I created a separate spreadsheet, documenting each discrepancy with dates, amounts, and notes. The pattern was undeniable. The money I was providing was not being used as claimed. The evidence mounted week after week, a growing digital testament to deception. I confronted Brian over dinner at my house. I had made his favorite pot roast, hoping the familiar comfort food would make the conversation easier. I told him I was concerned about the financial management of his business. I mentioned the duplicate invoices and missing inventory. His reaction was not what I expected. There was a flash of something in his eyes before his expression settled into a mask of confusion and concern. It was a look I had seen before, sitting across from financial executives when I presented evidence of their fraudulent activities. A momentary panic quickly concealed. Brian told me I was mistaken. He said the business was doing fine, and that I was getting confused about the details. He reminded me that I was getting older and suggested that perhaps my memory was not what it used to be. I was 64, not 94. My mind was as sharp as ever. I knew what I had seen. The condescension in his tone cut deeper than any accusation could have. He spoke to me as if I were a child, confused and in need of gentle correction. I had spent my career being underestimated because of my gender. I never expected to experience the same dismissal from my own son. Elena joined the conversation, her voice gentle but condescending. She told me I should enjoy my retirement and not worry about their businesses. She said that tracking numbers and invoices was stressful and unnecessary for someone my age. I should focus on my car and my walks. Let them handle the complex business matters. Her words were carefully chosen, wrapped in concern but hiding something darker. I had interviewed too many people trying to conceal financial crimes not to recognize the technique: distract, dismiss, deflect. I watched them exchange glances across the table. In that moment, I saw something I had missed before. The calculated look of people with something to hide. In my career, I had interviewed countless financial criminals. They all had that same look when cornered, a mixture of defensiveness and calculated charm. A silent communication passed between them, and I felt suddenly like an outsider in my own home. The pot roast turned to ash in my mouth as I realized the depth of whatever was happening. That night after they left, I sat in my home office and pulled out all my financial records. I created a spreadsheet tracking every dollar I had given them over the past 2 years. The total made my stomach turn. Nearly $150,000, not including Sophia's ballet tuition. And for what? Businesses that seemed to be perpetually struggling despite my constant infusions of cash. The numbers told a story of systematic deception. Regular withdrawals that coincided with my deposits. Purchases that could not be verified. A pattern of financial behavior that any forensic accountant would flag as suspicious. I dug deeper, accessing online banking records and credit card statements. I tracked the flow of money from my accounts to theirs, and then outward. Much of it disappeared into untraceable cash withdrawals or transfers to accounts I could not easily identify. The more I looked, the worse it appeared. This was not simple mismanagement. This was deliberate, calculated financial manipulation. And I had been funding it, month after month, out of love and trust. I made my decision that night. I would gradually reduce my financial support. They were adults with viable businesses. It was time they stood on their own. I would continue to pay for Sophia's ballet lessons directly to the school, but the monthly transfers to their business accounts would stop. It was a reasonable decision, one that any financial advisor would support. I was not cutting them off completely. I was simply encouraging financial independence, something every parent should want for their children. I called Brian the next morning and explained my decision calmly. I told him that I would help them transition to financial independence over the next 3 months, reducing my contribution each month until it ended completely. His response was surprisingly accepting. He thanked me for all my help and said he understood my decision. I was relieved. Perhaps I had misjudged the situation. Maybe the discrepancies were just poor bookkeeping rather than deliberate deception. I wanted to believe the best of my son, to trust that he had inherited my integrity along with my love of classic cars. 3 days later, Brian called with exciting news. He and Elena were organizing a charity event called the Detroit Steel Charity Gala. It would showcase classic American cars while raising money for automotive vocational programs for underprivileged youth. They had secured the historic Michigan Central Station as the venue, a landmark recently restored to its former glory. His voice was animated as he described the event, the prestigious location, the worthy cause, the opportunity to bring together car enthusiasts from across the Midwest. It sounded impressive, ambitious, and legitimate. Brian asked if they could display my Thunderbird as the centerpiece of the exhibition. He said it would be the perfect representation of American automotive. Craftsmanship! I was touched and agreed immediately. The restoration was nearly complete, and I was proud to show it off for such a good cause. My suspicions faded somewhat. Perhaps I had been too quick to jump to conclusions. The gala sounded like a genuine attempt to contribute to the community, while highlighting their businesses in a positive way. I was proud that they had organized something so meaningful. As the event approached, Brian sent me documents to sign as the owner of one of the showcase vehicles, insurance forms, display agreements, standard paperwork for such events. I signed them digitally and sent them back without much thought. I was focused on putting the final touches on the Thunderbird, buffing the chrome to a mirror finish and making sure the engine purred perfectly. The paperwork seemed routine, nothing that raised any red flags. Just standard liability waivers and insurance documentation that would be expected for any public event featuring valuable automobiles. The night of the gala arrived. The venue was spectacular. The soaring ceilings of the former train station were illuminated with soft lighting that highlighted the architectural details. Classic cars were arranged throughout the main hall, each one a gleaming testament to American engineering and design. My Thunderbird was positioned on a slightly raised platform at the center, the robin egg blue paint catching the light beautifully. I felt a surge of pride seeing my grandfather's car displayed so prominently, restored to its original beauty through my own hands. The event drew an impressive crowd. Business leaders, classic car enthusiasts, local celebrities, and politicians all mingled beneath the ornate ceiling of the historic train station. Brian worked the room with easy charm, discussing engine specifications and restoration techniques with fellow car lovers. Elena flitted from group to group, her designer dress flowing around her, as she ensured everyone had champagne and hors d'oeuvres. They looked successful, confident, completely in their element. I felt a moment of doubt about my suspicions. Perhaps I had been wrong after all. Elena greeted me at the entrance, stunning in a vintage-inspired evening gown. She handed me a flute of what she called her special midnight mimosa, brut champagne with blackberry puree. The glass was frosted and elegant. I took a sip and immediately noticed something wrong. Beneath the sweetness of the berries and the crisp bite of the champagne was a metallic undertone, a bitterness that did not belong. It was subtle, easily missed by someone not paying attention. But I had developed a refined palate over years of business lunches and corporate events. The strange flavor was unmistakable and immediately concerning. 33 years of investigating financial crimes teaches you to trust your instincts. Something was very wrong with that drink. I smiled and complimented Elena on the unique flavor, watching her eyes carefully. There was a flicker of something. Anticipation. Expectation. She was watching me too intently, her eyes fixed on the glass in my hand. I had seen that look before, in the eyes of defendants when key evidence was about to be presented in court. An intensity that betrayed too much interest in the outcome. I excused myself, saying I wanted to greet some of the other car owners. Moving through the crowd, I spotted the event MC near the stage, a distinguished-looking man in a tuxedo. He was checking his notes for the evening's program. I approached him, making small talk about the beautiful cars on display. My heart was racing, but my voice remained steady, my expression pleasant. Years of high-stakes financial negotiations had taught me to conceal my emotions when necessary. This skill was serving me well now, in a context I never could have anticipated. When he turned to speak with someone else, I swapped our nearly identical champagne flutes, mine for his. It was a move I had practiced many times during financial sting operations, watching the sleight of hand experts we sometimes hired to help catch criminals in the act. The switch was seamless. No one noticed. The MC took a sip from what had been my glass, nodding appreciatively at the flavor. He had no reason to be suspicious, no cause to detect the subtle wrongness that I had identified. I returned to circulate among the guests, stopping to chat with other car enthusiasts, and posing for photos next to my Thunderbird. Camera flashes popped around me. I was careful to appear to sip from my new glass without actually drinking. My mind was racing through possibilities. What exactly had been in that drink? Why would Eleanor try to drug me at such a public event? What was the endgame here? The answers were likely in those documents I had signed so carelessly. I needed to find out what exactly I had agreed to. The program was scheduled to begin at 8:30. At 8:25, the MC took to the stage. He tapped the microphone and began to welcome everyone. His words started clear but quickly became slurred. He swayed slightly, gripping the podium for support. Mid-sentence, he collapsed. His body slid off the stage and landed partially on a polished V8 engine block that was on display. The heavy thud of his body hitting the metal was audible even over the music and conversation. A moment of stunned silence fell over the crowd before the panic began. The crowd erupted in panic. People screamed and rushed forward to help. Eleanor pushed through the crowd, her face a mask of confusion and horror. Not at the man's collapse, but at seeing me still standing, perfectly fine, on the opposite side of the room. Our eyes met across the chaos. In that moment, she knew that I knew, and I understood exactly what had been happening. The elaborate charity event, the liability forms, the poisoned drink. It all clicked into place with terrible clarity. In the chaos, I moved quickly to a quiet corner with my laptop bag. I had come prepared, not knowing exactly what I would find, but suspecting I would need access to information. I connected to the venue's Wi-Fi and accessed my secure cloud storage. I had decades of experience preparing financial presentations that revealed complex fraud schemes to boards of directors and regulatory agencies. This was no different. I needed to present the evidence clearly and irrefutably before Brian and Elena could control the narrative. Within minutes, I had projected my findings onto the large screen intended for the charity presentation. The spreadsheets were clear and detailed. They showed the flow of my money into their businesses, the duplicate invoices, the mysterious expenses. Most damning of all was a series of transfers from their business accounts to a shell company I had traced to the Cayman Islands. The financial trail told a story of systematic theft and deception spanning years. The numbers did not lie. They never do. But the true revelation came when I displayed the liability rider I had supposedly signed for the event. $200,000 of personal liability coverage in my name. If anything went wrong at the event, I would be personally responsible. The signature was mine, digitally extracted from a PDF of my will that I had shared with Brian years ago. They had used my own trust against me, manipulating my digital signature to commit fraud on a massive scale. An accident at the gala, perhaps the collapse of an elderly woman who had been poisoned, would trigger insurance claims that would ultimately fall on my shoulders. The final slide showed my granddaughter Sophia's ballet tuition payments being redirected to fund Elena's flower influencer marketing campaigns. The money meant for my granddaughter's future had been used to buy followers and engagement for Elena's Instagram perfect image. This betrayal felt the most personal, the most cutting. Sophia's talent and passion exploited for social media popularity. The evidence was undeniable. Bank transfers, redirected payments, fabricated receipts, all meticulously documented with the precision of a forensic accountant who had spent decades investigating much more sophisticated fraud schemes there than this. As security personnel attended to the collapsed MC and called for medical help, I calmly walked to the stage microphone. I informed the stunned crowd that I had evidence of attempted murder and fraud. I explained that I had already contacted the authorities and the Illinois Securities Division with a complete fraud packet detailing their schemes. My voice was steady, my words precise and clear. This was not an emotional outburst, but a calculated disclosure of criminal activity. I had spent my career communicating complex financial crimes to juries and regulatory boards. This was no different. While I spoke, I executed the final part of my plan. I used my phone to authorize the freezing of both their business merchant accounts, a measure I had arranged in advance with my banking contacts from my hedge fund days, contingent on my confirmation that evening. With a few taps on my screen, I severed their access to the financial resources they had accumulated through their schemes. The money they had stolen from me and others was now beyond their reach, locked behind digital barriers they could not breach. Brian and Eleanor tried to approach the stage, but several guests who had understood the gravity of the situation blocked their path. The evidence was projected for all to see. Their expressions shifted from confusion to anger to fear as they realized what was happening. They had been exposed, their elaborate plans unraveled by the very skills they had underestimated in me. The forensic accounting expertise they had dismissed as the fading abilities of an aging woman had proven to be their undoing. The next few hours passed in a blur of police statements and medical personnel. The MC was rushed to the hospital, where he was treated for phenobarbital poisoning. He survived, but the toxicology report confirmed what I had suspected from the bitter taste in my drink. The police took samples of the remaining liquid in the glass I had swapped, finding the same sedative present in significant quantities. The evidence of attempted poisoning was clear, supporting my allegations of a broader criminal conspiracy. By dawn, the full weight of my revenge was becoming apparent. Repo trucks arrived at Brian's vintage car shop, hauling away half-finished muscle cars that clients had paid for. But that remained incomplete despite my financial contributions. The flower wholesalers that supplied Elena's studio received automated notices of credit, holds on their accounts. By noon, they had yanked all her credit lines. The financial house of cards they had built was collapsing with breathtaking speed, each part of their fraudulent enterprise falling in sequence like dominoes. The local business papers ran the story with headlines proclaiming, "Poisoned Champagne Wrecks, Vintage Gala." Brian and Elena's reputations were ruined overnight. Their businesses, built on fraud and deception, collapsed like houses of cards. Clients demanded refunds. Suppliers required immediate payment. Landlords issued notices of default. The financial infrastructure that had supported their lifestyle disintegrated in a matter of days. The truth, once revealed, worked with devastating efficiency to dismantle everything they had built on lies. They faced eviction from both their business properties and their home within 7 days. The banks, alerted to the fraud investigation, froze their personal accounts as well. The charity event attendees, many of whom were influential members of Chicago society, spread the word throughout their networks. No one would do business with them again. In the interconnected world of Chicago business and society, such a public downfall was irreversible. Doors closed, opportunities vanished, relationships soured. They had gambled everything on their scheme and lost it all in a single evening. As for me, I drove my Thunderbird home that morning, the engine humming perfectly after all my careful restoration work. I adjusted the carburetor slightly, fine-tuning the idle to a smooth, steady purr. There is something deeply satisfying about machinery that functions exactly as it should. No deception, no hidden agendas. Just precision engineering, working in perfect harmony. The sunrise painted the sky in shades of pink and gold as I drove along Lakeshore Drive. The car responded perfectly to every touch, every adjustment. A machine built on sound principles and maintained with care and attention. Everything there businesses had not been. I realized then that solvency is the sweetest exhaust note, the clean, clear sound of honest business and honest relationships. No amount of money is worth sacrificing your integrity. My son and his wife had tried to poison more than my body. They had poisoned our family bonds with their greed and deception. The betrayal cut deep, a wound that would never fully heal, but I had prevented them from causing further harm, to me or to others. That knowledge brought a measure of peace amid the pain of what had been lost. 1 week after the gala, I received a call from Sophia's ballet school. They were concerned because her tuition payment was late. I explained the situation briefly and arranged to pay them directly going forward. I also arranged for Sophia to stay with me while her parents dealt with the legal consequences of their actions. She was 16 at the time, old enough to understand the basics of what had happened, but still young enough to need stability and support. I would provide both, creating a safe harbor amid the storm that had engulfed our family. Sophia arrived at my house with 2 suitcases and her ballet gear. Her eyes were red from crying, her shoulders hunched with the weight of her parents' crimes. I prepared her favorite meal, chicken parmesan with extra cheese, and we sat at the kitchen table. Like we had so many times before, she asked me if what people were saying about her parents was true. I told her the facts as gently as I could, neither sugar-coating the truth nor dwelling on the most painful details. She deserved honesty, delivered with compassion. By the end of the meal, she had stopped crying. By the end of the week, she was back at ballet practice, finding solace in the discipline and beauty of dance. The legal proceedings moved swiftly. The evidence I had compiled was comprehensive and damning. Brian and Elena accepted a plea deal rather than face a full trial, where all their schemes would be made public. They each received 18 months in a minimum security facility plus 5 years of financial probation. The sentences were relatively light, considering the scope of their crimes. But the public humiliation, the loss of their businesses and reputation, and the damage to their relationship with their daughter were punishments that no court could impose. Sometimes the legal consequences are the least of what criminals lose. Sophia and I settled into a new routine. Morning walks by the lake became our special time together. She would tell me about her ballet progress while we watched the sunrise paint the water in shades of pink and gold. On weekends, I taught her about car engines, showing her how to check the oil and change a tire. She had her father's mechanical aptitude, but none of his deceptive tendencies. Her fingers were nimble and precise, equally suited to ballet positions and mechanical adjustments. She absorbed knowledge eagerly, asking questions that revealed a sharp, analytical mind. In her, I saw the best parts of our family legacy, untainted by greed or dishonesty. I established a trust for Sophia's education and future, structured so that neither Brian nor Elena could ever access it. The trust would provide for her ballet training and eventually her college education. I made sure she would always be financially secure, regardless of what her parents did. The legal documents were ironclad, drafted by attorneys who specialized in protecting assets from exactly the kind of financial manipulation that Brian and Elena had attempted. Sophia's future would be built on a foundation of financial security and ethical principles. The Thunderbird became our project. Sophia helped me with the final details of the restoration, learning the history of American automotive design as we worked. She especially loved the distinctive sweep of the rear fins and the way the hood ornament caught the light. Together, we took it to classic car shows across the Midwest, winning several awards for the quality of our restoration work. The car became a symbol of our bond, a connection that transcended the betrayal that had altered our family forever. When Sophia sat behind the wheel, her hands resting lightly on the original steering wheel, I saw a glimpse of the future, a future where honesty and care could rebuild what deception had destroyed. When Brian and Elena completed their sentences, I allowed supervised visits with Sophia. I did not keep her from her parents, despite what they had done. Family relationships are complex, and I believed Sophia needed to form her own understanding of her parents. But I was always vigilant, always watching for signs that they might try to manipulate her, as they had tried to manipulate me. The visits were awkward at first, laden with unspoken recriminations and lingering hurt. Over time, they developed a tentative new relationship, one built on the painful foundation of acknowledged wrongdoing and careful boundaries. 5 years after the gala incident, I received a letter from Brian. It was the first direct communication we had since his sentencing. He expressed genuine remorse for his actions and acknowledged the pain he had caused. He did not ask for forgiveness or financial help. He simply wanted me to know that he understood the magnitude of his betrayal. The letter was handwritten, the paper bearing small marks where tears had fallen. Whether they were genuine or another performance was impossible to know with certainty. Trust, once broken so completely, is nearly impossible to restore. I did not respond immediately. Trust, once broken, is like a vintage engine thrown out of alignment. It requires careful recalibration and extensive testing before it can be relied upon again. But I did keep the letter, tucking it into the Thunderbird's glove compartment, a reminder of how easily family bonds can be damaged and how difficult they are to repair. Sometimes I would take it out and read it again, searching for sincerity between the lines, wondering if the son I had raised was still somewhere inside the man who had tried to poison me. Elena never reached out. She moved to another state after her release and started over with a new name and a new business. Occasionally, I would spot her distinctive floral style on social media under her new brand. Some talents persist, even when character fails. She had regained some measure of success, building a smaller but evidently profitable business in a city far from Chicago. We never spoke again. Some betrayals are too fundamental to address, some bridges too thoroughly burned to rebuild. As for me, I found a new peace in my role as Sophia's guardian and mentor. The walks along Lake Michigan continued, but now they were filled with conversations about her hopes and dreams for the future. The Thunderbird ran beautifully, taking us on road trips to ballet competitions and college visits. Life developed a new rhythm, different from what I had imagined in retirement, but fulfilling in its own way. I had lost a son but gained a deeper relationship with my granddaughter. The ledger of life rarely balances perfectly. I never regretted my actions that night at the gala. When faced with betrayal, especially from those closest to you, you have two choices. You can become a victim, or you can become a force of justice. My career had taught me to follow the evidence, to trust patterns and numbers over words and promises. Those skills saved my life and secured my granddaughter's future. The methods I used to expose Brian and Elena were the same ones I had employed throughout my career. Meticulous documentation, careful analysis, strategic presentation of irrefutable evidence. The truth, properly presented, is the most powerful weapon against deception. Sometimes I think about the mimosa glass and how close I came to drinking. Its poisoned contents. One sip of trust in the wrong person can be fatal. But one act of clear-eyed justice can set right a multitude of wrongs. The bitter taste that alerted me to danger saved not only my life, but Sophia's future as well. A lifetime of honed instincts and professional skepticism culminated in that moment of recognition. The metallic flavor of betrayal is unmistakable once you know what to look for. The revenge I took was not about anger, though I certainly felt that too. It was about consequences. In the financial world, every action has a reaction, every investment a return. Brian and Elena invested in deception and received the appropriate dividend. Bankruptcy, disgrace, legal consequences. The mathematics of justice balanced the equation perfectly. They had attempted to profit from my death. Instead, they lost everything they had built on lies. There is a certain elegant symmetry to such outcomes. I invested in truth and received something far more valuable. A second chance to shape a young life. The opportunity to pass on not just my financial resources, but my values to my granddaughter. The satisfaction of seeing justice served through careful planning rather than emotional reaction. Sophia flourished under my guidance, developing into a young woman of exceptional talent and integrity. She carried forward the best parts of our family legacy while learning from the worst. Sometimes the most valuable lessons come from witnessing what not to do. Some might say I was harsh, that family should forgive and forget. But forgiveness does not preclude consequences, and some actions are too serious to simply forget. Attempted murder crosses a line that cannot be uncrossed. Financial fraud against your own mother reveals a character flaw too deep to ignore. There are betrayals from which relationships cannot recover, wounds too deep to heal completely. The scars remain, visible reminders of vulnerabilities we can never afford to forget. As time passed, I found a certain philosophical acceptance of what had happened. Human nature contains multitudes, capacities for both tremendous good and shocking evil. Even within families, even between parents and children, these contradictory potentials exist. Brian and Elena had chosen greed over love, deception over honesty. The fault lay with them, not with me. I had trusted as any mother would. When that trust was violated, I responded not with helpless victimhood, but with justice. There is power in that choice, dignity in refusing to be exploited. The Thunderbird sits in my garage now, fully restored to its original beauty. Sometimes, in the evening, I sit behind the wheel and listen to the perfect idle of the engine. That steady, reliable hum reminds me that some things can be fixed with enough care and attention. Other things, like trust, once broken, are never quite the same. The car serves as both comfort and metaphor, a machine with visible mechanisms, understandable systems, predictable responses, so unlike human relationships with their hidden motives and capacity for betrayal. Sophia graduated from college last spring with honors in business and dance. She has opened her own dance studio, teaching ballet to children from all backgrounds. Her business model includes scholarships for talented kids whose families cannot afford lessons. She runs her finances with impeccable precision, a skill she learned partly from watching the consequences of her parents' financial misdeeds. Her studio is thriving, built on transparent business practices and genuine passion for dance. When I attend her student recitals, I see the positive legacy that has emerged from our family's darkest chapter. I attended her grand opening, driving the Thunderbird that we had restored together. As I watched her cut the ribbon and welcome her first students, I felt a sense of completion. My revenge had not just been about punishing those who wronged me. It had been about creating space for something better to grow in the aftermath. Sophia's studio represented that new growth, a business built on integrity and passion rather than deception and greed. In her success, I found the most meaningful vindication of my actions. The studio space is bright and airy, with large windows that flood the practice rooms with natural light. The walls are painted a soft robin egg blue, the same shade as my Thunderbird. When I commented on the color choice, Sophia smiled and said it represented strength and renewal to her. She had transformed the painful lessons of her childhood into something beautiful and productive. Watching her guide young dancers, through their positions I saw a resilience and wisdom beyond her years. She had not merely survived our family tragedy, she had transcended it. The last time I saw Brian was at Sophia's opening. He came alone, stood at the back of the crowd, and left without speaking to me. But he left an envelope with the receptionist. Inside was a check representing the full amount he had taken from me, plus interest. No note, just the check and a receipt, showing he had made a donation to Sophia's scholarship fund. The gesture spoke volumes. Acknowledgement, repentance, perhaps even a desire for some form of redemption. I wondered what his life had become, how he had changed since that night at the gala, whether the person who had tried to poison me still existed within him. I deposited the check without comment. Some debts can be repaid in dollars, others never can be. But the gesture suggested that perhaps he had finally understood the lesson I had taught him that night at the gala. Actions have consequences. Integrity matters more than money. Family is precious but not unconditional. The financial restitution was meaningful, but it could never restore what had been broken between us. The relationship between mother and son, once damaged by such a fundamental betrayal, remains forever altered. Healing may occur, but scars remain. As for Elena, I hear she has remarried and started a new family. I hope she has learned the same lessons for the sake of her new children. Some people need to lose everything before they understand the value of honesty. Her new business appears to be legitimate, her social media presence more authentic than before. Perhaps the consequences of her actions led to genuine change. Or perhaps she simply became more skilled at concealing her true nature. From a distance, it is impossible to know with certainty. I wish her no ill will, but I maintain a healthy skepticism about the capacity for fundamental change in those who have demonstrated such calculation. And me. I still take my morning walks along Lake Michigan, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of robin egg blue, just like my Thunderbird. I still review my financial statements with the same attention to detail that saved my life. Some habits never fade, nor should they. The vigilance that served me throughout my career continues to serve me in retirement, though focused now on protecting Sophia's future rather than identifying market manipulation. The skills remain valuable, even as their application has changed. I have made new friends, mostly through the classic car club and Sophia's dance connections. People who know my story and respect the strength it took to hold my own family accountable. I date occasionally, mostly widowers with their own vintage cars and stories to tell. Life continues to unfold in interesting and unexpected ways. The attempt on my life did not define me or my future. It was merely one chapter in a longer story that continues to be written. When people ask me about my son and what happened between us, I simply say that we had a disagreement about business practices. I see no need to publicly relive the details of that night. The newspapers did enough of that at the time. Privacy is a value I still cherish, despite the very public nature of Brian and Elena's downfall. Their story belongs partially to me, but also to them and to Sophia. I choose to speak of it sparingly and with discretion. What I keep to myself is the quiet satisfaction of having outsmarted those who thought me an easy target, the pearl of wisdom earned through hardship. that sometimes the most devastating revenge is simply allowing natural consequences to unfold, guided by the steady hand of truth and evidence. There is power in disclosure, in bringing deception into the light where it cannot survive. The spreadsheets I projected at the gala were more destructive than any weapon could have been. They dismantled a complex fraud scheme with ruthless efficiency. Each number and transaction a nail in the coffin of Brian and Eleanor's deceptions. The detective skills I honed over 33 years served me well in my greatest personal crisis. The same attention to detail that caught market manipulators caught my own son in his deception. It is a bitter irony, but one that ultimately saved my life and my granddaughter's future. The patterns are the same, whether in high finance or family betrayal. Money moving where it should not. Discrepancies between claimed purposes and actual uses. The telltale signs of someone trying to conceal their true intentions behind a facade of legitimacy. If there is a moral to my story, perhaps it is this. Trust, but verify. Love your family, but watch the numbers. And remember that the sweetest sound in the world is not vengeance, but justice. The steady, reliable hum of truth, coming to light and setting things right. Like the perfect idol of a well-restored Thunderbird engine, justice has its own harmony. A balance of consequences proportional to actions. A restoration of order after chaos. A system functioning as it should, without deception or manipulation. Sophia understands this now. We have spoken often about what happened, processing the events and their meanings as she has grown older and gained perspective. She has forgiven her parents in her own way, establishing boundaries while maintaining connection. She has learned the value of financial independence and the importance of transparency in business and relationships. Most importantly, she has learned that even when those closest to you fail dramatically, you can still forge your own path with integrity. Last week, Sophia announced that she is expecting her first child. As we sat on my porch overlooking the lake, she asked me if I would help her choose a family name for the baby. She placed her hand on her stomach and told me that she wants her child to know where they come from. The good and the bad, the strengths and the weaknesses. She wants them to carry forward the resilience and integrity that survived our families. Darkest chapter. I was moved beyond words, honored to be part of this new beginning. Life moves in cycles, patterns that repeat with variations across generations. The Thunderbird that passed from my grandfather to me now belongs to Sophia, though I still drive it most days. Someday it will belong to her child, a tangible connection to family history that predates our personal tragedy. The car has witnessed it all, silent and steadfast, a mechanical companion through decades of joy and sorrow. Its engine still purrs perfectly, the result of careful maintenance and respect for its engineering. As I watch the sun rise over Lake Michigan, I reflect on everything that has happened, the career that taught me to see patterns in numbers, the retirement that became a battle for survival, the family bonds tested and broken and partially rebuilt. Through it all, I remained true to my principles. When betrayed, I sought justice, rather than vengeance. When faced with loss, I focused on what could be saved, rather than what was gone. Now, with a great-grandchild on the way, I look to the future with hope rather than bitterness. The wheel turns, the engine runs, life continues its journey, and I am still here, watching the horizon, ready for whatever comes next. My hands steady, on the wheel, eyes clear, mind sharp. The bitter taste of betrayal faded long ago, replaced by the sweeter flavor of justice served and lessons learned. In the end, that is the most satisfying revenge of all. Not destruction, but reconstruction. Not punishment, but consequence. Not an ending, but a new and better beginning built on the hard-won wisdom of the past.